Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, the Dodgers, they've made the first big free agency move of the 2024-25 offseason, and the National League arms race is officially on.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it very much. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work here in the sports talk space in the Philadelphia area. I've been on 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio side, talking Philly sports, all Philly sports, for 5 years now. This is my third season being a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member, and also my third year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing if you're consuming this in podcast form. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted as we keep you updated on the Phillies offseason. And it also, listen, it's free, it's easy, keeps you up to date. It really helps me out too. So if you haven't done that yet, please do. If you already have, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can keep the NFL season going with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Speaking of getting started, the Los Angeles Dodgers have gotten the offseason officially started. News comes down yesterday that they have signed Blake Snell to a 5-year, 186 or 180 plus $180 million deal. Bottom line is what I'm hearing is Dodgers and Blake Snell, who, if you'll remember, just 2 years ago was a Cy Young Award winner. Then he had the year in San Francisco last year that didn't exactly go great, but now he's going to be wearing Dodgers blue. And the Dodgers are far from done. They're still a potential team for Juan Soto. They're still a potential team for young Japanese star pitcher Roki Sasaki. They're still looking like a team that's going to add throughout the offseason, and they just keep getting better. The arms race is officially on. And what does the Blake Snell move mean for the Philadelphia Phillies? Well, the first thing you have to do, right? I've never read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, believe it or not. I'm not that smart. But I do have a general understanding of conflict. And the first thing you need to do when you're battling with a team is you need to understand what that team's goal is, what their mentality is, how they are approaching things. And the Los Angeles Dodgers just told you, hey, we ain't going nowhere. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to add. We're going to spend even more money. And we're going to continue to up our payroll and bring in stars because we want a dynasty. And if you're a Philadelphia Phillies fan or a Philadelphia Phillies front office member, you look at that and you say, well, I almost said a bad word there, bleep. That ain't good. That does not make your job any easier in the National League when you see a team that won the National League and the World Series that comfortably, add another great pitcher. Like, they might be able to put together, when this offseason is all said and done, 2 high-level starting rotations. I'm talking 10 guys. Not just a starting 5. They might have a starting 6 and then guys in the bullpen that could be swing guys that could start if injuries happen. Like, this just shows you, right, the Philadelphia Phillies, they can't go out and just, like, sign everybody. Like, throw $700 million at Soto and then trade Bohm and get bullpen guys and then sign Bregman and then go ahead and, like, I don't know, trade Ranger Suarez for Luis Robert or Garrett Crochet or something like that, like trade all your prospects. No, they're not going to go out and build like this super team to match the Los Angeles Dodgers because, frankly, they don't necessarily need to. We've seen superpower teams lose in the past, and the Philadelphia Phillies are already a really good baseball team on paper, right? They are. If we get caught up in our emotions about the team, they're talented. So they're not going to go out and just get everybody and have it be well, you sign this star, we sign this star, back and forth until spring training. But it does show you how dire the need to improve this roster is. I just said, right, like the Phillies aren't going to go out and completely build like this super mega Monstars team to compete with the Dodgers and go into like the billionth luxury tax threshold. But they're also not going to be allowed to rest on their laurels and sit there and say, well, we're going to run it back and we're going to be okay with the roster we had last year and not make significant changes and not improve upon the weak spots that we see in our team, because the Dodgers are still doing that. And the Dodgers won the World Series. They're not resting, and that means the Philadelphia Phillies cannot rest either. So your path to the World Series, it already looked tougher once the Dodgers, we had this conversation on the podcast, when the Dodgers won the World Series. How much tougher is the path to winning the National League, getting to the World Series, hoisting that trophy? And it looked significantly tougher when the Dodgers did what they did, eviscerating the Yankees in 5 games in the World Series. Well, now, today, it looks even tougher than that. I mean, I'm tired of the Dodgers. I really am. And I know I sound like a bitter opposing fan, but I'm going to sound like a bitter opposing fan today. Just buying everybody. Is this what the early 2000s Yankees were like? Just throwing money at every star that they don't need just so they can have them and nobody else will? That's annoying. And at the same time, what I will say, and I will concede this point, if you got the money and you want to pay them and they want to play there, that's how baseball works. It's a non-salary cap sport. The luxury thresholds are there. And if you want to say, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, and you want to sign guys through the luxury tax and put you up above that threshold because you want to win, that's your right. And the Philadelphia Phillies have done that over the past couple of years, not to the extent that the Dodgers have, but I mean, that's how they've built this roster that they have that got them to the World Series in 2022 and close to the World Series in 2023 and to one of the best records in baseball in 2024. But, who was right above them in that whole best record in baseball chase last year? The Dodgers. And they had the best record in the regular season, and they went on a run in the postseason, and they won the World Series. And now they're the team that fires the first shot in the offseason. Like, if that's not a wake-up call, I don't know what is. Not just for the Phillies, but for teams around baseball. Like, hey, we are not letting go of this trophy. And that's a scary, scary thing. Like, I'll be honest with you, I should say. As we sit here on November 27th, Thanksgiving Eve, and we're going to get into other stuff tonight, by the way. Today, I should say tonight. I don't know. It always feels like nighttime because it gets dark at 4 p.m. But we're going to talk about the Phillies bullpen and how much do they need to add, and we're going to evaluate Kody Clemens 2024. So this is not just going to be the I hate the Los Angeles Dodgers evil empire type of conversation. But as we sit here on Thanksgiving Eve, November 27th, 2024, I don't see a lot of ways that the Philadelphia Phillies match up with the Los Angeles Dodgers on paper. Now, we know on paper doesn't always play out in the postseason. The Mets were not as good as the Phillies on paper. 2 years ago, the Diamondbacks were not as good as the Phillies on paper. Both of those teams sent the Phillies home. So this isn't me being defeatist. This is me saying the Phillies are going to have to do some rather impressive things in the offseason for them to feel like they are matching up with the Los Angeles Dodgers. You can't play on hope and prayer, especially not with this fan base, especially not with this payroll, especially not with the way the last 3 seasons have gone down. This team is pot committed to competing in this window. I'm talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. So they can't just say, well, yeah, we gave Bryce $300 million. We gave Trey Turner $300 million. Schwarber got paid $100 million. Castellanos got paid $100 million. Wheeler just got the bag, and Nola just got the bag. And we paid all of these guys and these big-time players. And then what we're going to do is say, well, we're good, really good, but the Dodgers are elite, so we'll just run it back and hope that's good enough. No, that's not good enough. The Phillies now have to be more aggressive in the 2025, 24, 25 offseason. You know what I mean when I say that. Than they were even going to have to be before, which was already pretty aggressive considering that they're trying to build a World Series roster. So Dave Dombrowski has his work even more cut out for him. I don't know what that changes about the strategy for the Phillies. Do you take some guys off the trade block? Because you don't have a situation where now you can sit around and I don't know, wait for the right situation to come around. Can you say, well, we can't move Bohm and take a chance, a flyer on Bregman? We can't move Ranger Suarez. Our rotation needs to match up with the Dodgers. We can't move Castellanos to drop salary to try and hopefully sign somebody because maybe the Dodgers will sign them. Like, I don't know how it changes the Philadelphia Phillies strategy, but I know how it should. And that is go out there and get anybody who can make this team better and make them a Philadelphia Philly. If that means bringing back Carlos Estevez and Jeff Hoffman in the bullpen, which we're going to talk about the bullpen here in a second, go do it. If that means going out and acquiring Garrett Crochet to make your rotation super powered, and I'm not talking about trading Ranger Suarez for him, but adding him to a rotation that has those guys, and then having Andrew Painter as kind of like the sixth starter or an emergency guy when the first dude gets hurt, go do it. Whatever you can do to compete with the Dodgers, you now have to pull out all the stops because that team's a problem. That team was a problem, then became a bigger problem, and now is the biggest problem in sports right now. I would say that there is no larger gap in any of the big four North American sports than the Los Angeles Dodgers roster compared to their peers. There just isn't. And unfortunately, the Philadelphia Phillies are going to have to go through them to make it to the World Series. So, that's a fun little conversation about another team that is just turning themselves into a dynasty. But we're going to still focus on the Phillies. We're not going to freak out yet because, like I said, it's November 27th, 2024. There's a lot of time. A lot of things can happen. And a lot of things are going to happen because I had a revelation when it came to the bullpen earlier today. And I'll tell you what that is and what is going to have to happen with it as we continue today's episode. But let's talk about FanDuel first because they're awesome. You need to be ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. It's a great time for it because you know what tomorrow is? Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and that means big-time NFL action. You got the Cowboys playing the Giants. You've got the Lions taking on the Bears. You've got the Packers hosting the Dolphins at Lambeau. There's a lot of great action. You're going to want to be on FanDuel to bet it. You're going to want to be ready for the NFL action this weekend, but also you have NBA action, NHL action, college basketball is going on. So many great things all the time that you can bet on FanDuel. So never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Go ahead and check them out. All right, so I had this revelation with the bullpen, right? And I had not thought about this. I knew the bullpen was going to have some turnover, as they always do. And I got really focused on this whole Carlos Estevez, Jeff Hoffman, which one do you bring back, all of that. And then as I wrapped up my evaluation of the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen, and also I got to be honest, remember how, so if you saw yesterday's episode, I gave this whole long PSA about don't believe all these stupid trade rumor posts that are out there from non-MLB insiders like, what if the Phillies did this? Here's a mock trade I like. They never come true. But anyway, I saw a post from one of those accounts because I get so annoyed at them. I look at them forever. They're now on my algorithm on social media. But I saw a post from one of those Phillies fan accounts, and it had the bullpen names for 2025 listed out, the projected bullpen. And there were like 6 names I didn't know. And I was like, or not that I didn't know, but like weren't from this past year's team. I was like, were there really going to be that much turnover? So let's run through this exercise to say how much does the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen need to add? Like how much could be different? How many players are going to need to slot in there in the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen? So here was the starting roster. The 26-man opening day roster for 2024 had 8 relief pitchers on it. Jose Alvarado, Connor Brogdon, Seranthony Dominguez, Jeff Hoffman, Junior Marte, Luis Ortiz, Gregory Soto, and Matt Strahm. Remember Ryan Kerkering, he was out with the flu. He had like the weird forever flu down there in spring training that had him out for like 3 weeks. But anyway, those were the 8 guys. So you might say, well, where was Kerkering? That's why. But let's look at now, if the Philadelphia Phillies indeed, and they most likely will, have 8 relievers on their opening day roster for the 2025 season. How many of those guys are going to be back? Well, I know that Matt Strahm is going to be back. I know that Jose Ruiz is going to employ one of those spots. They tendered a contract for him. So that's two guys, Strahm, Ruiz. I know that Kerkering is going to be back. And all of this is like barring injury. I'm talking about guys that are going to be on the roster. Now, if they're not healthy for the start of the season for whatever reason, like knock on wood, stuff happens in spring training, lest we forget the Rhys Hoskins final year here. I'm going to knock on wood again just because that was such a bad injury reference. But those are the three guys so far that I think are going to be in this bullpen. You've got Strahm, you've got Jose Ruiz, you've got Orion Kerkering, you've got Jose Alvarado, who some people have started to talk about like being traded. Possible, I guess, but relievers getting dealt are normally part of a bigger deal. He's not most likely going to be like the main framework of a deal. And now it could be because Gregory Soto was the main framework of that trade that the Phillies made with the, where was he? Chicago? No, Detroit. I'm an idiot. With Matt Vierling in that. And we're actually going to talk about Kody Clemens, who was part of that trade when we evaluate his 2024 season coming up. But Matt Vierling and Nick Maton were part of that trade. Anyway, so you got four guys right there, and I'm trying to think if I'm missing anyone. Strahm, Kerkering, Alvarado, Ruiz. That's probably it, right? I'm looking through these other names on here. Connor Brogdon stinks. Seranthony Dominguez is in Baltimore. Junior Marte stinks and has been released. Gregory Soto is in Baltimore. Jeff Hoffman is a free agent. Carlos Estevez is a free agent. So, you probably have four guys that you like in the bullpen for the Philadelphia Phillies. That is half of what you need to be. So you've got to add four relievers. That's some work to be done. Those are going to be some new names. That's some money to spend. It's also some money off the books, depending on who you bring back. But that is some money to spend for the Philadelphia Phillies, which means they're going to have to make some big acquisitions. They're going to have to find guys that work. We've had an episode in the past where I talk about the Philadelphia Phillies' evaluation of their ability to develop bullpen talent, because they did it with Hoffman and they did it with Strahm and they did it with Kerkering. And I wonder if they're being a little bit overconfident in their ability to do that. But bottom line is this: they're going to have to, because you're not going to go out and sign four high-level relievers to one bullpen in one offseason. They'll add guys, but they won't all be like, oh, I remember that name. Oh, I lied. Sorry. They have one other guy, Tanner Banks. How could I forget Tanner Banks, who they acquired at the trade deadline this past year? Tanner Banks will be in the bullpen. So that's five. So they'll need to add three guys. I still think that the Philadelphia Phillies are looking to bring back one of either Jeff Hoffman or Carlos Estevez. And with Jeff Hoffman getting potential starter money, the most likely option is Carlos Estevez. I think the Philadelphia Phillies are going to try and work something out for him. I think that is a distinct possibility. So I'm going to just go ahead and say the sixth guy in the bullpen, let's go with Carlos Estevez. Outside of that, well, you got to fill in two spots. And Carlos Estevez coming back would give you a bona fide closer. But let's say he doesn't. And let's say it's just another big free agent acquisition. You look at the guys that you have in those five that we know are most likely, like 90+% going to be on the opening day roster as relievers. Ruiz ain't a closer. He's more of that middle inning, potentially high leverage guy. Strahm is not a closer. He is your lefty, high leverage, biggest spot of the game guy that has a little bit of versatility. Jose Alvarado, not a closer. Just he's a little too volatile for my liking. He's another one of those lefty high leverage guys. Tanner Banks is a lefty specialist. So, okay, he's going to get situations in like the 6th or 7th inning where maybe you have a big spot against lefties. And Orion Kerkering is going to be your high leverage righty guy. So your high leverage righty guy is Kerkering, lefty guy is Matt Strahm. Jose Alvarado is kind of like that more, we need velocity, we need to overpower a guy, also lefty. He's very, very good. That guy that kind of exists in between them and everybody else. And then Jose Ruiz and Tanner Banks are your lower level righty-lefty guys. That's not bad. It's not a bad place to start, but you notice they don't have somebody who's a true closer. on that list. So you got to go get a true closer. I don't know if that's Devin Williams from Milwaukee, but if you do that, he'll have to be acquired via trade. And that would probably mean moving Alec Boehm as part of that, or maybe Nick Castellanos. I don't know. It'd have to be a big name that would be going back to Milwaukee for Devin Williams, who was a monster this past year for them. That makes things complicated on that front, but you need a closer. Let's say you go get Estevez, and that gets you to 6. Well, you still need then a high leverage righty arm to match like kind of what Jose Alvarado does. You need 2 high leverage arms on either side of the mound. 2 lefties, which you have in Strom and Alvarado, you hope, if Alvarado does what he did in the second half of his season. And then you need another righty to go alongside with Kerkering, especially considering Kerkering's so young. And that was Jeff Hoffman, and it was Carlos Estevez. You don't have those guys back right now. So you have to go get those. And if you get Carlos Estevez back, you'd still like to add another one of those to go ahead and balance things out, because Estevez is probably going to be the closer. And then who's your last guy that you bring in? Well, it really could be anybody. You'd almost want it to be a swing guy. I saw some reports of should the Phillies be interested in bringing back Spencer Turnbull, who's been available. And you remember Spencer Turnbull was very good for the Phillies, not this most recent year, but last season when he stepped into a starting spot and was very darn good. Or wait, no, was that earlier this year? Man, it was earlier this year, wasn't it? And then he went ahead and he had that injury and he never really got back to healthy. Maybe the Phillies will look to do that and look to have him in the bullpen. He could be an interesting piece for them to sign. Free agent this year, had the injury issues. Now he was a starter. Maybe they believe that they can get a full season out of him if they put him in the bullpen rather than making him one of those swing guys. But you also know that he could throw long-term innings if you need to move that guy up, or he could be your innings eater. Or, and this is the craziest option, maybe you have Taijuan Walker in the bullpen. And I don't really want that to happen because I don't think the guy can pitch. But if they say, hey, we think we can get something out of him, we've already got this money committed to him because of this dumb contract we signed him to. Not dumb at the time. Looks dumb now. Got to be fair to Dave Dombrowski. I didn't mind the contract at the time. I thought it was a potentially good signing. That potential all went out the window since he started his time here at Philadelphia. But Taijuan Walker could be that innings-eating bullpen guy, that middle innings reliever. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for him. But what I will say is if the Philadelphia Phillies need to add 3 big-time pieces to the bullpen, that's a good amount of turnover, and that's a good amount of work to be done. And that's where the most volatility will be with the Philadelphia Phillies this offseason. As far as number of players you have to turn over is the bullpen. So I hadn't really thought about how many guys you'd have to add, and I saw a bunch of new names in a roster projection in the bullpen, and I was like, oh, wow. I didn't really think about how many dudes that they're missing there or spots that they have available. So something to keep an eye on for sure. Coming up, as we wrap up today's episode, we're going to evaluate Kody Clemens' 2024 season. A strong year for a guy that I can't really figure out exactly what his role is here. And I'm not sure that he knows either. What I do know is he's been relatively productive, and we're going to laud him for it coming up next. All right, let's talk about Kody Clemens' 2024 season. And he didn't really get that much opportunity, right? He's 28 years old, so he's no spring chicken anymore. I think people always look at him as like, oh, well, he's Roger Clemens' kid, so you're always going to think about him as a kid. And, oh, is he 24, 25, 26, this young player that's got a little opportunity but a lot of upside, and that's not necessarily the case. Now, he's only spent 3 years at the major league level. This past year, he had his most WAR ever because he had a negative 0.2 in 2022 in Detroit. He had a 0.0 in 2023 with the Philadelphia Phillies and a 0.3 this past year. You look at the amount of games he played 43 this past season, which is 4 down from the 47 he played in 2023. He had less plate appearances, less at-bats, and part of that is probably a good sign because that means that the Philadelphia Phillies were a little bit more solid in their starting lineup, and you didn't have to use Kody Clemens as much. And it wasn't really because of production, right? You just look at how the numbers stack out. Now, his batting average is a major issue, right? You need the guy to get on base more often. You saw him hit 230 in 2023. Well, he hit 219 this past year. 29 strikeouts, so he did cut down on the strikeouts, and he was just a little bit unlucky. He had 25 hits all year long, and that's just not enough to get it done. But you look at some of the power numbers, and you say, well, is there something interesting here with Kody Clemens? He had 9 doubles this past year, 7 in 2023. Better numbers. 5 homers this past year, 4 in 2023. So the weird thing with Kody Clemens, right, is he's one of those intriguing players that plays solid defense. He seems to have a little bit of clutch ability, right? If he's put into a big spot, you don't feel as uncomfortable with him as you did with a guy like Jake Cave, which is weird to say because Jake Cave was a more proven major league player, and Kody Clemens hit 219 this past year. So when Kody Clemens walks to the plate, I don't get the sense from the fan base of, this game's over. He's going to get out. He's got no shot to get a hit. No, I feel weird belief in the player. When normally you see a guy batting below 220 walk to the dish and you're like, well, this is over. He's getting out. So that to me says that he's done some things here where the fan base has started to buy in on him as a depth piece. Now, he's not Edmundo Sosa. Like, remember how we said Edmundo Sosa doing what he did this year? Like, he is one of those high-level utility infielder guys. Well, Kody Clemens is proof positive of why Edmundo Sosa is so valuable because there are a lot of Kody Clemens around baseball that have these type of numbers that make little impact on their team. And I'm not trying to roast Kody Clemens. This is just reality. He's not a huge part of the Philadelphia Phillies winning or losing because he just doesn't get that type of opportunity. So to have a guy like Edmundo Sosa is incredibly valuable because other teams just have guys that are like this. So what is Kody Clemens' role with this team going forward? I don't quite know. The reason he's so valuable is because of his versatility when it comes to the positions he could play. He could play in the outfield. He could play first base. He could play third base. He could play second base. I should say he could play the corner outfield spots. He is very, very valuable in that you could put him in at a bunch of different positions. You know what he is? You remember those old commercials about like Flex Seal? Sorry, I just smoked my microphone again. Flex Seal, where it's just like you have a little crack in a pipe or something, spray some Flex Seal. You need to build a boat with a swinging mesh door or whatever. I don't know why you ever need to do that, but you can do that, and you remember the old infomercials. Kody Clemens is kind of like the Flex Seal of the Philadelphia Phillies roster. He's not a full-time replacement. He's not a guy that you're going to put out there for 50 games like Edmundo Sosa and hope you get the same results as an all-star starter. But we have an emergency here. We need to fix it short term. We need to do it quickly. We're going to go ahead and put Kody Clemens in that spot. Like, he is a good holdover for when you need to find a permanent solution. He can keep you afloat, which is perfect for the analogy of the boat with the swinging mesh door. But that's kind of what his role is on this team and what his role always will be on this team. Now, can you win a World Series? This is what every conversation comes down to with bench players, right? Or really with any player on the Philadelphia Phillies. The goal for this team is World Series. So you have to ask yourself the question, can you win a World Series with X player in X role? Can you win a World Series with Edmundo Sosa being your best bench player? Absolutely. Can you win a World Series with Zach Wheeler being the ace of your staff? Absolutely. Can you win a World Series with Bryce Harper probably being your best overall hitter? Absolutely. Can you win a World Series, and this is going to sound silly compared to those examples, but with Kody Clemens as one of your bench pieces that you're going to have to use throughout the season sparingly? I think he can. I think he gives you enough to hold you over until you find solutions or get guys back or make moves that you need to find a more long-term solution. I think Kody Clemens is a guy that can give you good enough at-bats and has had enough moments here in Philadelphia that should make you feel good. That's not a place that I'd be looking to upgrade if I was the Philadelphia Phillies, simply because it's not a major need and you have other things that you want to add. Like, you might trade Alec Bohm. You definitely need to add to the outfield. You got to bring in 3 guys in the bullpen like we were talking about earlier. There are a lot of other things that you need to figure out before you worry about one of the last guys on your bench. And that's essentially what Kody Clemens is for the Philadelphia Phillies. So what do I evaluate his year as? It was an underperforming year by average, but I felt he had moments. I don't know. I'm going to give him a C based on I'll give him a C minus based on what we should have expected from him. He had a lower average year than what he had in 2023, so we're just going to drop him down a little bit. And compared to his peers, I'm also going to give him a C minus. He's a below average bench player in Major League Baseball, but he's a guy that has a little more upside in moments, and that may come from the Roger Clemens genes. But Kody Clemens, not a guy that we're annoyed with, not a guy that we're crazy about, just a guy that fills a role for this team, and you need dudes like that on any competitive roster to fill in the cracks. Kody Flexio Clemens. I'm going to trademark that. All right, that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. I will have a new episode tomorrow on Thanksgiving. I'm going to go ahead and put one out. It's the What Should Philadelphia Phillies Fans Be Thankful For episode that I do every year, so we'll get into that tomorrow. But thank you so much for checking out today's episode. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. And I will talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.